We have Andy Dinh, CEO of TSM, sort of longtime gamer, and Hand, who has a startup in gaming, Super League Gaming, and sort of an experienced oil executive before coming into gaming, so an interesting story there. And Bracken Darrell of Logitech, who is both sort of building devices for gaming and then marketing with all these sort of gaming companies. So we can sort of dig into esports. First question, just for the audience, you know, how many people here play some video game more than 3 hours a week? All right, so a lot of people, yeah, exactly. and does anyone like watching YouTube, Twitch, would you say sort of consume gaming content streaming? All right, so very small sort of numbers, I think. So I think it would serve to sort of explain sort of the audience here. Bracken, maybe you start off. I mean, you're sort of the company building devices, so I think you're sort of a strong signal of the demand here. Can you talk a little bit about why you're seeing and why you've invested so much in gaming?
Yeah, you know, I joined Logitech 6 years ago. My kids were right in the strike zone of gamers. They were, I had 3 kids, and both boys and my daughter all played games. And we came in, we had 4 people working on it, and you know, I could feel the energy. So we just, Student Body Right, put a bunch of people on it. Our business, I think at that time, was about $120 million. Today it's 500, so it's grown almost 500%, 450%. We've
500 million a year revenue in gaming. Okay, and that's like mice and
keyboards, headsets, and we just bought a microphone company called Blue Microphone. Blue Yeti is their most notable product. But during that time, and for those of you who are watching, I'll just give one statistic and then I'll shut up and let other talk. You know, more people are watching people play, like Andy, play games on Twitch or YouTube than are watching ESPN, Showtime, Netflix, all combined.
Right, they're these huge. I mean, and now it's on ESPN. I was just watching sort of Overwatch play there, but obviously a lot of this is happening on Twitch and YouTube. And I mean, I think your story is so interesting because I think you saw sort of the business case and got in. Or can you explain sort of what motivated you to jump into esports after living sort of a totally different life before that?
Yes. I would say sometimes I do miss my expatriate days in London with flying business class and all those nice luxuries. But yeah, I spent about 18 years mostly in the energy sector. Met some venture capitalists here in the Bay Area who convinced me to run a clean tech company for about 5 years up here. So I kind of learned my Sandhill Road training, how to raise money and try to scale a company. But if you can imagine, that was like the 2008-9 timeframe, so not a great time for clean tech, but we persevered and succeeded as a company. But it was an opportunity I really learned about the importance of timing. And so when I was looking for my next startup to run, I was really watching a lot about what were some of the big trends out there. And I hung out at the arcade a lot growing up. But, you know, over time, I got interested in different things, right? But I started to see that gaming isn't something you grow out of anymore. It's a lifestyle decision. It's multi-generational. I think 46% of families say they game together as a way to spend more time with each other. And so once I started to see the mainstream effect kicking in, I got pretty excited that the timing was spot on for esports and that why not dive into the mix and see if I could hit a home run.
And so Andy, you know, he's like a celebrity in certain rooms. I think you were playing. TSM started what? You were like 17 when it really started to become a company. Is that right? Or can you explain sort of the path into building an esports franchise?
Yeah. So I consider our company a content company first and foremost.
Okay.
But I dropped out of high school to go to college, and during college, I started playing. So during college, I started playing League of Legends, and I became the best player at League of Legends when there was only a couple thousand.
Reginald,
people.
Right?
Yeah, and my gamer tag was Reginald, and I started creating content because there was demand for that on Blogspot.com, and Blogspot shared around 50% of the revenue to us. And so what I noticed was that there was inefficiencies in creating content on Blogspot, so I created a content platform that made it easy for content creators to create guides around gaming. And during that
But this was like, I'm playing League of Legends, I want to figure out which items to buy in order. Like, your website was where you go to sort of Google that, or to like figure out the answer, right?
Correct. It was a database. It was tools for content creators. And we offered custom news, custom content. And for the most part, I ran that for a while. it grew from 1 million page views to 100 million page views. And while running that company, I would consider it a media company, I was also playing the game professionally for a long time. I was the rank 1 player. And naturally, what I noticed was that there was a lot of demand to watch gamers compete and create content. So I made a team called Team Solo Mid. We rebranded to TSM. And during that time, what I noticed was that there were so many eyeballs watching our team play, similar to the amount of eyeballs that were watching hockey players. And so I started to pitch sponsors on sponsoring our team and also packaging that with buying ad inventory on our website. It was very similar. So I ran my media company, I ran my esports business, and I was a player. It was really awkward because I was an owner playing on the same team. So the power dynamics were really weird because I was our star player owning the team. Fast forward from playing into stadiums and in theaters with 50 people, in a time span of a year, it was 1,000 people, and then another year, it was 5,000, and then it quickly grew to playing in the stadiums with 15,000 people, and it just became too much because, first and foremost, there are young kids that are 13, 14 on the rise, and they're trying to take my spot on the team that I owned.
You're out of the game now.
And so I didn't have enough time to compete, run a media business, and run an esports business. So I stepped down, hired the best rookie there was to take over my position, and I went full-time CEO. So I kind of fell onto it just by figuring out pain points at that time.
Right. So, Bracken, I mean, one of the challenges we see sort of a lot of people watching esports on Twitch. There are the game developers who are making a lot of money selling these games. We have esports teams. I think it's interesting that you highlight that you're a content business also, which sort of speaks to some of the tension here, because there are all these people trying to get a piece of the puzzle. You're sort of part of who they're trying to court, because a lot of the revenue is going to come from sort of marketers, people advertising their devices. Where do you want to be right now, or where are you really sort of putting your devices out there most, and what do you see as sort of the best revenue generator?
Well, look, at the end of the day, we started as a mouse company. We're the other mouse company. And we'll always be a mouse company. And so we're fundamentally an engineering company in hardware peripherals. And so this is absolutely the strike zone for us. It's perfect. So we bring more innovation and more engineering into this space than anywhere else. And we start at the pro level. And we're really, because we know that, just like in NBA basketball, people are looking at the pros and then they're adapting and adopting their equipment. And so our goal is to be like a Nike in esports. And so we're aggressively innovating. We start with teams and owners and players like Andy, and we flow it right down into even, we just made, I don't know if we've announced that yet, but.
Just heard it here.
Okay, you heard it here
What
first.
happened?
But we're very interested in Super League gaming. So we want to be embedded throughout this sport, from the pro all the way down to the person who sits in their basement somewhere in their room and plays League of Legends online.
But that means you're paying Twitch or the game or the esports team or Blizzard?
We sponsor about 25 franchises around the world. We were trying to even think about how many teams that is. It's probably 100 plus teams around the world. So we do sponsor teams. We work directly with players. We develop our products with players. The transaction flow for us so far has really been predominantly we sell equipment and then we do pay sponsorships. But that'll evolve over time. We'll be involved in broader and different ways as time goes on.
Right. And I mean, I think, the Fortnite phenomenon is so huge right now. Yep. And I think that's when people are thinking about gaming, like for a second it was Overwatch, League of Legends, these very organized teams, and then all of a sudden, Fortnite and Epic Games say, okay, we're going to offer, $100 million in prize money, and that's going to be sort of this ground-up sort of esports effort. I don't know, what do you make of it? I know it's a sort of big phenomenon, hard to sort of figure out, but what is your takeaway from what's going on with Fortnite?
Yeah, I mean, when we started early on, we knew that the game publishers effectively in many ways do hold all the cards because they own the IP, right? So it's like if you had to go to the NBA to get a license just to have a pickup basketball game. So we had to very early on really think about, as all of this territory is being staked out at the publisher level, and as people are going to try different types of professional league structures. Riot and Activision went one way with the League of Legends and
super
Overwatch
controlled,
leagues. Very controlled. They are the commissioner of their leagues. Fortnite is launching something that's really on the other side of the spectrum. It's like the democratizing of the professional level. But Super League always came in with the premise that while all of that was being sorted out and different models were being tested, that there would still be a need for feeder systems, that the little leagues and minor league structures would need to be invented, and that, frankly, regardless of what professional model shakes out, there's a role for the amateur feeder system. So we run everything from 6 to 14-year-old youth leagues around Minecraft. We've wrapped an eSports layer around it. We have young adult and adult leagues around League of Legends, so that kind of establishes the eSports cred, given it's one of the crown jewels of eSports. We now have Clash Royale as well in our leagues, and we will be launching Fortnite and Rocket League shortly. And I think the beauty for us is our goal is to amass a portfolio of top-tier titles across mobile, different genres, different skill levels and age groups, so that we can be a unifying brand for all amateur gamers. And hopefully we've got a title that matches up with your interest to join the league.
I think one of the sort of lines of criticism against esports is this sort of soccer analogy. I mean, there was a lot of hype around American soccer at one point. There are all these local leagues, and it hasn't translated into sort of the wild sort of fan base for professional soccer in America. Like, clearly a lot of kids are playing Fortnite video games, watching a little bit of some videos on YouTube, Twitch. But does that translate necessarily into pro gaming as a big phenomenon?
It's a great question, because early days, some of our earliest investors were professional esports team owners. So we have owners of the Warriors and the Dodgers and Tampa Bay Lightning and Texas Rangers who've also made investments in professional esports and have also invested in Super League. And I think in the early days, it was a bit more of a hedge on their investment. You know, where do you find the next great talent? You can't just look at online rankings. It doesn't tell you whether a person is going to be coachable, a good team player. But I would say increasingly now, when I talk to those investors of ours, it feels like what they're more incented for our success on is that we are cultivating the future esports fan base. You know, a kid who plays Little League is an MLB fan for life.
Right.
And so it's interesting. Early days, that youth league I talked about, people would kind of look at it and laugh a little bit. It was kind of like, oh, that's not really an esport. But now there's almost a healthy respect for it. That's the first positive way we're introducing kids to esports, and the positivity of being part of a team in a league. And they'll grow into being Overwatch and Fortnite players, and they'll grow into being fans as well at the professional level. So I think that's an important role we play in the ecosystem.
Andy, I mean, part of what's sort of always funny about esports is just the idea somebody's playing video games, making a ton of money doing it. Can you give us sort of the update on the top pro esports player? Like, how much are they making? What's their lifestyle look? Are they still living in sort of gamer houses? What game are they playing? Like, who is the pinnacle of sort of the video game star at the moment?
So the pinnacle would probably be Ninja, where he's making close to, we're actually well over $1 million a month. But it really ranges depending on which game is being played, right? It could be anywhere between entry-level salaries from $50,000 to players on our team that are making up to $500,000 a month, and it's really grown.
Wait,
like,
players on your how much? $500,000
a month.
Wow. Okay.
So it's really grown like this, and
and that includes their Twitch revenue, or that's what you're paying them?
Correct. So it totals their total income together, and for a brand like ours, not only do we work with competitive players, but we work with all types of gamers, and we really help build their brand, right? And that's why I said that we're a content company. We're also an esports company, but we're heavily focused on esports and gaming because there's such high growth there. And the goal really is to make sure that we scale our business to the point where we can build talent in all games and service them all. Because at the end of the day, the publisher does own the IP. And so it's really about creating value, not only at the player level, but to the publisher level and also advertisers, right? So we're at the mid-sector where we're working with publishers to create value. We're creating value to players, and we're creating value to advertisers. And the better you do that, the more dollars you're going to be able to attract to your brand.
Yeah. Ninja came up, and this is sort of on my mind. We've all talked a little bit about sort of inclusion in video games. It's still sort of very male-dominated sort of hobby, and certainly at the elite sort of esports level. And I think Ninja gave an interview where he said something along the lines of he didn't stream with female gamers because he didn't want people to sort of think they were in a relationship, and there's a whole sort of social media phenomenon there. But there is this sort of ongoing conversation about bringing women into gaming? I mean, I'm just going to throw it out, sort of, hopefully a couple different answers at it. But yeah, is that a problem, and is there a solution?
I'll jump in first. We feel really strongly about this, but Ujesh Desai, who Andy and Ann both know very well, who runs our gaming business, he has two young girls, and he plays games all the time with his daughters, and he's still very disturbed by the caustic, kind of toxic nature of a lot of the gaming that goes on, and we all are, and I think it's just completely, it's 20 years, 30 years, 50 years ago, and so it's got to be fixed. And I think it's going to take everybody talking about it a lot, and I think it's going to take the platforms to get involved. I think it's going to take the game developers to actually monitor and intervene. And it's a must. It's an absolute must. It's unfair. And as far as, and if you think about it, here's a sport where really, maybe in the NBA, there's not a woman playing in the NBA right now because it'd be very difficult for most women to compete in the NBA. But if they could, I think they would. That's not true in gaming. You've got an equal platform.
Right.
A lot of women play. You don't even know they're women playing in the platform. So this should be the most inclusive game there is.
Yeah. I mean, we pretty early on noticed that as we were first kind of being the first consumers of our cloud-based platform and running our own experiences, that we were attracting a higher percent of young girl and female gamers to our experiences. Typically with a game like League of Legends, you're maybe seeing 8-9% female online. We were getting north of 20%. And we were also with our youth league seeing about a 60-40 split, boy to girl. And that told us that we were onto something, that if we could use this platform as a way to enable a distributed network of physical location partners to spin up in real life gaming experiences, you can play online at home, but if we can more often than not bring you together, there's going to be a lot of good things that are going to come from it. Aside from the fact that it's going to start to attract new audiences to the game, which is good for the publishers, right? They want to bring those new audiences to the game. The more that you know the people you play with in real life, all that toxicity and harassment goes away. You're now teammates together on that given day. And also your skill progression is faster. You learn from each other and you forge friendships. And the more your friends play, the more you're going to keep playing the game, which is another thing the publishers love. So we started to realize that while it's an online platform and the platform doesn't really care where you physically are when you're coming onto Super League, it was important to us as a brand that as much as possible we were giving you ways to find other gamers locally and physically come together to play so that all of those good benefits came out. So for us, the inclusion and empowerment message is core to our brand, and it's not just about females. It's about the wide psychographic of gamers and helping those people feel like they can have new ways to enjoy the game better.
And then, Andy, among sort of the top players, I mean, how are your teams all men, or what's sort of the breakdown in the professional level, and do you think it should be sort of gender integrated?
So first and foremost, my stance on it is that I definitely think that inclusion is extremely important. Right now, currently, our team does consist of all men, and the woman that runs our entire eSports company is actually a female. So that's I'm really proud of her, and she's always looking at talent. But for us as a competitor, we're always going to recruit the best players. Historically, our industry has always been extremely male-dominated. If you look at just pure data and statistics, whether it's on PC or console, what you do notice is that the percentages from female to male, actually at a young age where Ann works, is that it's around 60-40 from men at the 60 range and 40 from the female range. And there's significant drop-off at after the age of 12, where it drops from a 60-40, the female player base drops from the 60-40 range all the way down to 10%, right?
Wow.
And what's exciting, though, is that if you look at Fortnite, it's really transcended just like any platform. It's really brought in PC, mobile, and console together. And what we've noticed, looking 5 years back, our demo was around 2% female to 98% male.
That's
crazy. And within the last 5 years, we've grown to around 85% male to 15% female. So that's really good, right? But what's really important for the industry is inclusion, because that's what's going to bring our sport above any other sport. If you look at the barrier of entry for our sport, you can be 4 feet tall and still play this just as well as everyone else. You can be a 12-year-old and play just as well as, you know, a 24-year-old, right? We've contracted with players less than 16 through their parents before just because they were so darn good at mobile games and our older players couldn't keep up. And so what's truly exciting about our sport is that any gender, any race, and up to a certain point, your physicality, I don't know if I'm using the right word, but based on how physical you are, it doesn't limit you. And so that's really exciting. If you look at our generation right now, this is the first generation that's watching esports. And when our fans have kids, there's going to be 2 generations of esports. And it's been male-dominated for so long. So as it gets closer to 50-50, you're going to see explosive growth. And then when there's 3 generations of men and female that watch our sport, we're going to truly grow bigger than any other sport.
So to get to that, let's transition sort of the ambition of esports. I feel like, I mean, a lot of people here aren't playing the games. They aren't watching. I feel like we've talked about esports a lot. Like, there's been this sort of esports is on the cutting edge. Like, it's bigger than the Super Bowl. You know, there'll be events that are huge that give it all this attention. You know, what gets us to the point where, like, it's so saturated that sort of any audience we go to is going to be consuming that content? Or what's sort of the path you think we need to travel over the next sort of 5 years?
I think it's just time. I always draw a chart, and I won't try to virtually draw it in the air, but you know, if you're 80, 70, 60, 50, probably 40, maybe 30, then you get down to 20. If you're in those upper age limits, you know, most of those people barely played, you know, video games, much less watched any esports. When you go from 25, 22, 20, 18, 14, 12, everybody. So it's this age group is all in. That's why the numbers are so staggering. And a lot of people, even in this room, who are, you know, many of you are probably 25 and above, don't watch.
We're too old.
But you're too old. But there's a group below you that aren't. And so that group is going to grow up. And when they grow up, it's not a fad. It's a secular trend. They're all in. I mean, this is their sport. You know, for many of them, this is the thing they do as a pastime. Just like I played basketball growing up. I still play basketball. They play video games growing up. They'll still play video games when they're 55.
Is it a threat to traditional sports?
You know, I don't know if I'd say it's a threat. I think it's kind of like is a cell phone a threat to a PC? Most people have a PC and a cell phone. I think people will do both.
And I mean, you're the sort of youngest startup here, and you sort of came in and sort of had to transition the strategy a little bit. Can you talk about Super League strategy over the next couple of years and sort of what your goal is?
Yeah. Yeah, I think early on, because we had that point of view that in real life experiences is kind of where the magic could happen. We spent a lot of energy running those experiences and just getting out and meeting the players themselves. So we've run over 2,000 experiences to date. And probably from an investor point of view, if I have a regret, it's just that we spent so much time celebrating those experiences. And we use movie theaters for our locations. Why? Because they're empty all the time.
Right. If I Google you, go to a movie theater, watch people play games.
And they make great, you know, they make a great kind of interactive gaming location. But I think if anything, on the negative side, it kind of limited what people understood we were quietly building. So we were running those experiences as brand building, and we were quietly building this online to offline platform that will now enable us to have Super League experiences happening nationally at scale on the back of other people's infrastructure. So like we already run events in Buffalo Wild Wings, Microsoft retail stores. And what's cool about our cloud-based infrastructure is today now, because we've moved all that hardware into the cloud, all you have to be able to do, say you walk into a Buffalo Wild Wings, is 100 players walk in with their phones, they sign onto our platform to play Clash Royale in a specific geofence tournament we've designed, and Buffalo Wild Wings just has to take one of their 100-plus flat screens and accept a unique live feed that we're giving them, and that gives a bird's eye view of the gameplay happening in that physical location, along with some other very dynamic AI content-driven content that is very localized at location. So when Andy talks about being a content company, that's really what we are too. We are an aggregator of a big, diverse community of gamers, and then we are generating a huge amount of content through our platform and capturing a third-party spectating perspective that can be distributed in a variety of ways. So over time, you'll see Super League TV on Twitch and a lot of other ways to monetize that content.
Andy, you're like one of the biggest esports teams, but you want to focus on being a content company. I mean, to me, the criticism, it sounds sort of like GoPro, which is like you have a great device. Now it's like we're going to turn that into some brand that's going to make us a lot of money on other people's video platforms. Like, is that wrong, or you're just going to do it better than them? How are you a content company?
The reason why I consider ourselves a content company, and most of the time people argue whether an esport is a sport or not. I think it's very similar. I consider us just a singular influencer. The reason why, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Andre, they're so famous, right? Is because they're good at what they do, and so many people watch them, right? So to us, is this all about eyeballs? The reason why we're in esports is because there's just a lot of eyeballs there. And how we expand that further is we create content that reaches millions of users across all sectors within gaming, from reaching the casual audience that doesn't watch esports to reaching the most hardcore audience that do watch esports, right? And within that funnel, there's the hardcore audience, the casual audience that wants to get better, and the audience that just wants to enjoy time with their friends that want to learn how to play the game better. And we service those gamers with our resources and our websites. We service the hardcore gamers with our team. And the middle players that are just trying to improve, we offer technology to help them. And then how do we monetize it is, whether it's through a paid service or advertisers, we try to work in every single angle. And then specifically to our esports strategy.
Yeah, which platform is the most important to you, would you say? Where's your biggest audience, and what's your best revenue generator?
So every platform is important to you because you want to be a part of every single.
But like, one's winning right now.
I think specifically to esports, I think Twitch is the place to be for live content. However, for YouTube, right, it's very important because they're the most dominant. They're the most dominant VOD platform, right? So you use each platform for different things and how to communicate to your audience, because people go to these platforms and they look for different content. So as a brand, you want to be contextually relevant to your audience where you speak to them, right? And a win for TSM is to transition TSM, the brand, into a lifestyle brand around gaming, and to have a message behind our brand where gamers can follow us, not just the most hardcore audience, right? I think that's how we're going to get to a business at scale.
Yeah. So, there's so many games, it's constantly shuffling. Like, besides Fortnite, which I think is obvious and viral, like, what game do you think people, if they want to understand this industry, whether sort of what's happening, where to market, what game would you have them pay attention to? Or what are you really tracking right now to understand this industry?
Well, I'll repeat what you probably already know, which is, well, first of all, I will say when we started down this path 5 years ago, I thought this would be a little bit like the movie business, where occasionally you'd have a new franchise that would come in and blow up,
right,
and then either fade off and something else would replace it, and then there might be a couple that would keep going. The thing that surprised me is how little there has been of that. It's really been a story of League of Legends and CS:GO and all the, and now Overwatch, but there hasn't been the Fortnite effect until now.
Is that good or bad?
I think it's great to have a Fortnite come in, and I think there will be more. I think it's predictable. You will see more games come in like this. I remember when, actually a year ago Thanksgiving, Andy and I had, the day after Thanksgiving, Andy and I had dinner. I don't know if you remember this, but he said, Fortnite is going to blow up. He said, I'm playing it now, I'm watching it. It is going to take off. It's a great spectator sport. It's so fun to play. And I think that's going to happen more and more, and I think that's great. So if I were somebody who really wasn't into gaming, I'd watch probably League of Legends. Right now it's the biggest, and I think it will continue to be.
Yeah. And is there a game you're seeing kids play now besides Fortnite that is worth paying attention to, or is Minecraft still holding on? I mean, we think Minecraft is a good positive way to get kind of parents engaged and seeing the benefits of their kids participating in esports. I mean, most common thing parents say to me when they go to our events, because we give kids a jersey, parents think it's game day. They kind of feel like they're bad parents if they don't show up. So all of a sudden we noticed all these parents and grandparents and siblings showing up. And the most popular comment I get from them is, thank you for letting me be a part of this, because I can't stand over his or her shoulder in their room and watch them play. It's too intrusive. And another really popular comment is, wow, I didn't think this was my son or daughter that was competitive. I had labeled this one as not, because they weren't playing traditional sports, as different than the more competitive. But I think the key for
for both TSM and Super League is that, you know, we need to keep moving with the zeitgeist of these different game titles and keep a good portfolio. Andy has a game portfolio of different teams inside TSM. We have a different portfolio mix that speaks to different types of games and ages.
Great.
And so as the Fortnites come in, we can ingest them.
React and build.
And then we can churn out, you know. But I hope we always keep our youth league strong. I think it's an important entry point for people to, even if half the kids like at Little League are picking dandelions, they're still still getting in the mix. So
Andy, you have 10 seconds. We have to wrap. But what tournament should somebody watch this year? What is the biggest gaming moment that's going to happen this year?
I mean, I'm truly excited for the Fortnite World Championships. I think that's going to be huge for gaming. I think, you know, looking at Overwatch, League of Legends, those top games, they're all huge. Just figure out what interests you, and, you know, just look at it, pay attention. It's exciting. Just find what you like, enjoy.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.